What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be going over the most notable and biggest college football non-conference games of the 2025 season. As I tell you what, it is going to be a great college football season to watch. We're going to be going over these most notable games, and all of these games are excluding the big conference matchups that we're going to get this season. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it here. If you guys are new around here, make sure to go ahead and consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and also drop a like on the video and comment down below your biggest non-conference game that you are most excited to watch this season in college football. But we'll first start with the biggest game, and that is Texas at Ohio State, Week 1, August 30th at noon. And we all know why this is a big game. Obviously, both Texas and Ohio State met in the college football playoff semifinal. Ohio State defeated them, and now Texas trying to get their revenge. And it's really hard to argue against this being the most anticipated non-conference game of the 2025 season. And this is the second season in a row Texas travels to Big Ten country after they defeated Michigan last season. So we get that game right away, Week 1, August 30th. It is a noon kickoff game, but that is one of the most anticipated games of the 2025 college football season, and for good reason. But the next one is also a Big Ten SEC matchup. That is Michigan at Oklahoma, Week 2. And it's two programs, Michigan and Oklahoma, looking to bounce back in the 2025 season. Both teams will be breaking in new quarterbacks. Both teams should have a really good defense, especially Michigan, and not to mention Oklahoma. Week 2 for Michigan is one of, if not their toughest matchup on their schedule. It's also going to be a homecoming for head coach Sharon Moore, who played his final two college seasons with the Sooners. And obviously this game may have college football implications on the line, especially when we get down the road later in the season. So that's going to be another great game. That is Week 2. Another Week 1 matchup, though, is LSU at Clemson, as there is a lot of hype behind Clemson going into this 2025 season. Should have an elite defense, and Dabo Swinney found something in this team last season, and this one is bragging rights for the true Death Valley on the line. Clemson enters this matchup, though, having a dominant 70-5 home record since 2014, and LSU has also dropped 5 consecutive season openers, and that's another game that could have college football implications on the line later in the season, as that is just yet another big clash in Week 1. And then also in Week 1, they'll be playing on Sunday, though. It is Notre Dame at Miami on August 31st. Now, Notre Dame will be breaking in a new quarterback. Meanwhile, Miami has incoming transfer Carson Beck, as he steps into the spotlight right away here in Week 1, facing the national championship runner-ups out of Notre Dame. It is the first meeting between the two programs since 2017, and that'll be a pretty good game to watch on Sunday, following the big Week 1 Saturday of the big matchups we already got. And another one of those Week 1 matchups is Alabama at Florida State, as Florida State, another team looking to bounce back, had very high hopes last season after being left out of the college football playoff 2 years ago, but last season they absolutely collapsed and fell apart, and it doesn't start easy for them here, taking on Alabama Week 1, and there's no shortage of storylines between the programs in this one, after Alabama, took Florida State's spot in that college football playoff 2 years ago, and that is also a big game for Kalen DeBoer as well, so that should be an interesting one right there. And then also, we'll get back to the Week 1 games. There are two more Week 1 matchups, but the next one is Florida at Miami in Week 4. This will be another big matchup for both Miami and Florida, and after Florida got embarrassed by rival Miami last season at home, they're looking to get their revenge, as it is a highly anticipated rematch in Week 4 this September. And depending on what happens in that Week 1 matchup between Notre Dame and Miami, that's going to be a potentially big game, and might be a must-win for Miami, but you already know Florida has that game circled on their calendar. And then another rivalry game is Clemson at South Carolina, November 29th, Week 14. And this is a rivalry where South Carolina has won 2 of the last 3 meetings against Clemson. This is a rivalry game that is always pretty entertaining to watch, and especially this season with Clemson, potentially being one of the top teams, entering the college football playoffs and potentially could be a top 5 team at this time of the season when they take on South Carolina at the end of the season. That is going to be a fun non-conference game to watch, despite it being, at the end of the season. And then another non-conference game that may be overlooked is Tulane at Ole Miss in week 4. I saw this one and I just had to put it on the list because Tulane, they remain one of the most respected group of 5 programs in the country and could be dangerous in 2025. Now, these two programs faced off in 2023. Ole Miss beat them 37-20, but I think this could be a very interesting matchup as Tulane will look to pull off the upset at Ole Miss in week 4. And then back to another week 1 matchup. It is TCU at North Carolina. However, this one is on September 1st on a Monday. And this one, you can imagine for good reason, is on the list, not only because of Bill Belichick at North Carolina and all the hype and interest around that in the North Carolina program, but also TCU because they have thought to be a dark horse entering the season to make the college football playoff potentially, and being one of those dark horse teams, as that should be an interesting matchup right there and should get a lot of interest because of Bill Belichick at North Carolina in his first game. And then another week 1 matchup. This one is on Saturday though. It is Syracuse at Tennessee. Now I believe this game is at noon as well. It'll be going right at the same time Texas and Ohio State is playing, but this could be a game you flip to and tune into as well, especially with the question marks at quarterback for Tennessee. But Syracuse also has a new quarterback with former LSU transfer Ricky Collins, and this could be an interesting matchup and potentially a close game as well, especially with it being a week 1 matchup early in the season. And the next one I wanted to talk about is SMU at TCU week 4, as we've already talked about TCU potentially being a dark horse to make the college football playoffs this upcoming season. But then you got SMU, who made the college football playoffs last season, and this was a game that was an offensive battle last season where SMU beat TCU 66-42, and it's another game that potentially could have some college football playoff implications on the line as well. And the next game is Wisconsin at Alabama week 3, as Alabama 2 weeks later after facing Florida State will have to test another Power 4 foe out of Wisconsin, which obviously Alabama put it to Wisconsin last season 42-10, and I don't really see much changing in this matchup this upcoming season, but you never know. Wisconsin may surprise us, but unfortunately I just don't see that happening, but it did make this list. And the next matchup we'll talk about is Illinois at Duke week 2, as Illinois won all 4 of its non-conference games last season, which included the Cheez-It Bowl win, on its way to a 10-win campaign. But now a trip to Duke in week 2 will give them a chance to snap a 0-5 skid and earn its first true road win over a power conference opponent outside the Big Ten since 2007, as this will also be another very interesting matchup. And the next one is Georgia Tech at Georgia, November 28th, another game towards the end of the season, but we saw that big game last season, 8 overtimes between the two, where Georgia finally won it 44-42. That was one of the most insane games to watch last season, where Georgia rallied from an 18-point deficit to beat them in 8 overtimes, and hopefully that game is exactly the way it went last season. Obviously it won't be, but it could be another close game and an interesting one to watch. And the last matchup we'll talk about is Iowa at Iowa State week 2, and despite Iowa State winning 2 of the past 3 meetings between their rival Iowa, Iowa State has not beaten Iowa at home since 2011. So those are 15 non-conference matchups, and the most notable and most biggest non-conference matchups to watch this upcoming 2025 college football season. And again, those are all excluding the big conference matchups that we'll have. So let me know which one you guys are most excited to watch. And like I said, it should be a fun college football season this upcoming season. Absolutely cannot wait. But if you guys did go ahead to enjoy this video, make sure to go ahead, drop a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more. I would greatly appreciate it. And with that, we will see you guys in the next video.